we used to have career fairs, and companies did used to come, but nobody would come to interview you. You have to like find the right companies wherein it is for your job profile or what you're looking for. Go and socialize, network with them, get their cards, or like hand them over your resume. Really have good conversations with the recruiters or the group of people that have come over. And it is tough because it's very tough to like strike a chord with someone within 5-10 minutes and attend so many events while you're quite sleepless from your internships and studies and exams and whatnot.
Welcome back. We will continue from where we left off in the last episode. Hope you enjoy the show.
So what I found interesting was that if you have a very diversified exposure, you started with PFs from your parents' perspective, then moved on to index funds, crypto, individual stocks, and commodities as well. So, what were the philosophies behind investing in different instruments, and like what were the sources of your learning? What did really help you to like give you validation or assurance that you should channel your money within this particular instrument?
Yeah, I think this is a good one. I started with PFs, and as a young professional, I was just not seeing any returns, and I cannot even tap on that money immediately. It looked like I would be able to see any visible gains after, like, say, 30-40 years, and after 10 years, I can kind of even open it. So that kind of made me find more alternative ways, means, and also delve into what other people are doing. And that's when I started learning about my friends, colleagues spending on stocks and mutual funds, and having very short term goals. I also had someone who's doing options trading. So that is where I started also evaluating my risk appetite, risk profile, and my goals. uh, did I want to achieve short term goals, long term goals? And I kind of came to this conclusion that I do have like medium and long term goals, and my portfolio should be diversified according to that. And I had my investments spread out around like that. And till date I still have most of it in like index funds, gold bonds, and very known company stocks, and very less into what the projections tell or what is the emerging trend. So I'm still very conservative as an investor, I would say.
Are you comfortable telling us what percent of your portfolio is in cash, what percent is in investment instruments, and what percent in any other product that you would want to specify separately?
Yes, sure. So I think for me, around 15% would be liquid, and around like 30% would be in terms of overall investment, right? Which is like index funds, the gold bonds, and other stocks. So that's where I am right now. Earlier, it used to be around 10-30, like 10% only invested and 30% liquid. But yeah, right now it's more nuanced.
And the remaining, the 15 in liquid, 40
I mean, 50% is my expenses, rest
Acha,
is this breakdown.
got it, got it. See, there's one question that will be pretty unique for our podcast, because we haven't had a actually we have had a female guest. मेरे को याद नहीं आ रहा था, Gayatri. We have had a female guest, uh, but she was at a different life stage. So I'll ask you a similar question in terms of the perspective that what do you think is a different perspective that a woman brings to personal finance compared to men?
Okay, this is a tough question. I think, like, as I've grown up and seen like two, three different families closely, women do bring that grounding and stability to the financial decisions of the family. Seeing my own mother and mother-in-laws, they have, like, the men typically want to provide for the family and go to the extent wherein they would suffer to just have the best lifestyle for their family. But I see the women kind of showing to the rest of the family that, hey, this is the financial status, this is how much we can go for, and this is what we cannot absolutely do, which I find like men find it difficult to say because of the historical background of men being the providers and women being the nurturers. But with now, like, women working and also taking a seat in the financial decision of the family, this equation is changing, and there is more like balance and stability in terms of how you're operating as a family. I think, like me, I tend to save like whatever I can, and we often have like a hidden savings account, and during emergencies this is where the money suddenly appears from. So that is also very essential, I think, because we do tend to get disillusioned with our lifestyle and seeing people around, and of course social media, wherein everybody is leading lavish lifestyles, right? So I think this is where the grounding and stability comes from, which is very important.
So how has that changed now that you're discussing finances with your husband? And I know you have a very unique situation since you guys are not in the same place. But when you're having these conversations about money, do you see that there's a very different way of thinking from his side versus your side, or and especially even the relationship dynamic? Do you see that being different between you guys versus how your parents were?
Yes, I think it is also important to have like a man's perspective, because I sometimes feel like they would see the bigger picture, but as women, we would also look at 10 cent difference and kind of not take something which is 10 cent more. So having someone kind of say that, hey, this does not matter in the longer run of things, and also I used to be a big saver, but I had the whole perspective of investing out more and having diversification in the portfolio, what it means, showing me the longer picture. And I'm a very visual person, so showing me like what it would look like in 10 years, 20 years, what it looks like as a family. So I do have to thank him for showing me that. And from my side, I think I also like brought in more stability in his expenses, because as a single man, you tend to just see that, hey, I just have to take care of myself, most probably just my family. But giving that perspective for long term, that, hey, if you just spend $10 every day on coffee, or if you buy a $200 Calvin Klein, wherein you can just do away with a $50 cotton on shirt. So giving that those reality checks, I think it's a good balance.
Oh, sorry, go on. I just want to shift tracks a bit and focus on the NRI life, right? Like you have been a student in India, I've been a student in Singapore, and like you also describe your whole journey. Like you would also interacted with your friends back in India and stuff. Like, how do you see NRI education life comparing against an education in India? And also like how Singapore fares in that aspect in comparison to, let's say, US, UK, which are like very famous destination for NRI kids to go and study.
Right. I think in terms of education, I have also done my bachelor's, so I have a fair level of comparison. Of course, master's education for economics really varies from college to college. So, for instance, Delhi School of Economics, JNU, the curriculum and the lectures are very different. For instance, a private university giving out the courses. So the attitude of the students, like my friends I have seen, is also different. People from like the D school, etc., are very much focused on attending the lectures and going beyond what the curriculum dictates, because they are really interested in economics, as opposed to places where you just have to pass the test to get your degree. So, and I would say which is what I also observed in Singapore, the lecture and how they were delivered differed from like professor to professor. Not every professor would give out a great lecture. It really depended on their passion for the subject and for the passion of teaching. So I had professors who would also come in and say that, hey, you guys know nothing. And there were professors who were really passionate, and attending their every class was like their every class used to be houseful. So I think it is pretty much similar in terms of how, the education or syllabus is. Even I compared the curriculum for the top economic school in India. They do have, these reading suggestions as similar to Singapore. What changes is, of course, how exams are conducted, which is very loose in India. In Singapore, I mean, it is extremely, extremely strict. And even like you cannot bring anything to the exam hall. They would follow you till the washroom for your breaks, etc. So, you really have to know to give the exam. So that kind of brings the discipline. It's very cutthroat, which is something better in India. People really help each other out. But here in my cohort, actually, there were just like mostly, by population, we had 70% Chinese students, 10% Indian, and, from desis, like from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, etc. And around 10%, 5% from other countries. The biggest challenge I faced was the Chinese cohort would be just, with themselves, and it was tough to penetrate that their territory. First, because of language barriers, they would take notes in Mandarin, speak in Mandarin. So even if you miss a class, you cannot really rely on another student for notes. Here I see people are after classes going to study rooms in our hostels, and you would see like the class is ending at 4 p.m., people at study rooms from 6 p.m. till like 2 a.m. So, and this was like throughout the semester. So it's more rigorous, more cutthroat. People know that getting jobs are tough. So, there are three S's during the university life, like study, sleep, socialize. So you have to sacrifice one in order to be successful. So you kind of give up on sleep and you're either networking or you're studying. So I would say it's very, very intense abroad. And that is what I have seen for other folks in US, Canada as well, especially in the US. Like people start job hunting and everything, comes from the motivation to what to do after masters. And that is where learning also takes a back seat. Like your curiosity kind of takes a backseat because you are chasing good GPA, you're chasing a job.
This is very interesting because me and Madhvesh also have done a master's here.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's specific to economics because I had a very different experience here.
Okay.
I was earlier than both of you. My time it was very chill. Everyone was just relaxing and they were interested in studying, and most of the people were there because they were just interested in the subject, not necessarily. Maybe also the job scenarios were different at that time. That,
Yeah,
Mera,
for us, I think it was a 1 year course. We had 3 trimesters. We were always either in exams or assignments or job hunts. And I don't know, for our batch, especially, and even for similar master's batch, maybe for economics or social sciences, it was really intense.
मेरा भी काफी intense था. I think very similar to how Raka shared her experience. I think it was more enjoyable for me, even though it was cutthroat. The difference in culture in India versus here was very evident. Where India, like we are forced to study, I would say, but here it was more from your interest, right? Like my sessions were like my classes start at 8 and it would end at 5, and then I had to go to an internship in the meantime. So very similar to how Raka mentioned, it was a 1.5 year program. I had 8 months of internship along with it. So it was pretty intense, and the composition was also very similar. 70% Chinese, and I think 30% were Indians for me. But yeah, like intense for sure.
I don't know if you've discussed this before in another episode because we've had folks from Singapore talk about this, but maybe even you guys, how do placements work here? Because I studied in India and my first placement happened in college. So India placements is people come to your college and they want to take you. How does it work, say, in a NTU or any of the other universities here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so even I studied in India, and after bachelor's, like there were so many companies who were coming in, and the first company that came in, I kind of got through. So I came with a similar mindset, but how it works, we used to have career fairs, and companies did used to come, but nobody would come to interview you. You have to like find the right companies wherein it is for your job profile or what you're looking for. Go and socialize, network with them, get their cards, or like hand them over your resume. Really have good conversations with the recruiters or the group of people that have come over. And it is tough because it's very tough to like strike a chord with someone within 5-10 minutes and attend so many events while you're quite sleepless from your internships and studies and exams and whatnot. So it's definitely tough, and you have to like keep doing it. I think some of the students had like 500 applications sent in, and it's just a very tiring process to say the least.
The career fairs are mainly for the companies to showcase their brand versus students getting hired. I think it's more of like you have to fend for yourself here versus in India. You're kind of like spoon, and the companies and the students are with the same goal in India, where like you are looking for a job, the company is looking to find
Yeah.
someone. But here, it's I think a one-way traffic where you'll need to bang a lot of doors to get in.
Yeah, same for me. Where again, it's because I was earlier than both of them. It was we also had career fairs, and we all three of us did masters. And there's a different. I don't even remember the how was it for the bachelors as a student. Maybe they had it slightly easy. And we should not call it easy because after just after college, who else will take you there? It wasn't easy, but it was more straightforward.
Well, I think
See,
definitely different from India.
different density also. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a small metropolitan city versus a big country.
No, I think it's also in India that the universities take a lot of pride in their placement figures. So they are very driven to get the companies to come and hire you. Versus यहाँ पर they are more focused on we've graduated you, now it's your problem, now you figure it out. It doesn't look like they are very driven by I need to do 100% placements this year. They're more
uh,
like most people passed. That's good.
yeah, here also like the prime emphasis falls on the Singaporeans and the PR. So the government has an entire different scheme for like supporting them through employment. And I think as a foreigner, it's very tough for you to get that employment sponsorship. And us coming freshly from India, proving that why you should actually sponsor me is like the biggest challenge. Whereas if you're here, you automatically have that jump start
Yeah.
to getting hired.
Yeah,
Raka,
we
I also had this interesting question, right, based on your introduction, where you spoke about the non-work part where you are like into stuff like dance and stuff. And as an NRA, I think we also want to maintain that kind of a cultural relationship when you come outside of India. How has Singapore played a part, like Singapore as a country, in that part where you can still get connected to your roots in terms of culture, dance, art, etc.?
Yeah, I think Singapore has been pretty good in terms of that because we have four national languages here, right? And Tamil being one of them, there's a huge Indian population within Singapore. So, how I was able to maintain it throughout my 7 years here is initially when I came in outside of the masters world and all the boat competition and work, it was the dance club of NTU, and I only saw that it existed for bachelors. So, along with a few friends, we went in and started something for the master's student, which was the Graduate Students Associations Club. And within that, I was leading the classical wing. And that is where I made more friends outside of my master's cohort as well, which also added more flavor and fun to my master's days. And we continued that. There were some government of Singapore ads for which we were randomly chosen, and things just started happening naturally. After I graduated, it didn't make sense to be part of the club because it was not possible to come down to NTU from CBD, the center of Singapore, for the practices. And a lot of the events were specifically just for students and not alumni. So that is where I decided to also join like one of the dancing groups within Singapore, the Apsara's Arts. And they really follow like a rigid program, like you have to be of a particular level to join a particular class. And I had lost a little bit of touch because I had a gap in between. So again, to get back into that and to listen to your guruji, and they are very strict. Okay. So getting back to that took some time, but it was really fulfilling to go back during Navratras and other performances at Esplanade, etc. I think when I'm in the stage, the exhilaration that you get from the audience and from that vibe is something that kept me going. And yeah, I think that's how I was able to continue in Singapore. But yeah, let's see what it looks like in the future.
I think for the benefit of viewers, I just want to add that Singapore is as a very vibrant Indian community. So I feel like you will not miss India for most of the part, except the food, I would say. But yeah, like thanks, Raka, for sharing that.
Okay, final question. Fire. Do you know what fire is?
Yes, the
Independence, retire early. That movement. And this is generally a question that we end up asking all our guests. Have you thought about fire? Is there a fire number that you have thought about independently or discussed with your husband? And
I thought one independently. I think because I've been staying like alone so far. But yeah, I think the number would change as a joint couple. For me, independently, the calculation was pretty simple, like your expenses, monthly expenses times 12 and times the average inflation that you see compounded over number of years you want to live post 40. So for me, around 2.5 to 3 million was sweet GD. And yeah, I think there's still a long way for me to go because I did not really start investing till a very long time. So right now is when, over the past 2 3 years, I have put in my energies there, and I wish to continue that. So yeah, I think the figure, as I said, would also change when you think as a family for 2 people, 3 people, and so on, right?
So is that for India to settle outside of India?
I think this is for abroad. For India also, yes, I think
Okay.
it will change.
Yeah. And also, again, a note for viewers, 3 million would translate roughly to 18 crores INR.
okay, that is it. Thank you.
Really
Thank you,
great
Raka, for
episode.
coming through and for the suggestions.
It was great meeting all of you, and do let me know if anything else comes up. Would be happy to be part of it. Absolutely.
I thank you to the listeners also for watching this episode, and stay tuned for next one.